They're so entitled. The caste system, the history and the culture of India. But essentially what this caste system is, it's a Hindu concept that's been around in India for many, many thousands of years. It's illegal in India itself. And what it means is that, for example, if you are from a particular caste and if you're from a higher caste, you're automatically given like more perks, you are treated with more respect. Obviously, all of this is wrong. If you're coming here, you need to respect our norms. Nobody owes it to you to understand where you're coming from. Because you need to realize that you are working here, you are living here. You need to bend and in a sense accept the norms that are here. And if you are constantly living in a bubble of your own expat community, you're not going to know what locals are like. You're not going to know what local community and culture is like. It's not as simple as just saying that all these Indians are like this. There's nothing in their DNA that says they will be like this. It's about where they come from. It's about breaking up this kind of cultural bubble. Whose responsibility is it to break it up? The amount of backlash that came up because of one incident, sadly a girl lost her life, and this amount of backlash, this is not a one-off. This is years and years and years of resentment and tension building up under the surface, waiting for that one incident, and then everything came up. Welcome to another episode of The Damn Show. I've lost track of how many episodes this has been, but as of recording, we are basically going towards the next festive season. We've just come out of Christmas and everything. Now it's going to be CNY, and Ramadan is starting soon. So happy CNY as well as Ramadan Kareem to everyone who celebrates out there. And I think this is like a great time to talk a little bit about what happened last week as of time of recording, which is, if you remember, there was this major accident that got the whole country talking and pissed off a lot of locals actually because of a major accident that happened near Chinatown, near the Buddha Tooth Relic Temple. And it sparked a lot of anger and hatred towards Indians. To be fair, I think some people were a bit more careful. They didn't just paintbrush like all Indians in Singapore like this. But there was a lot of hatred that was directed at, in particular, this CECA Indians, which, I'm going to talk a little bit more about today. But before we even go there, it's the holiday season. I think everybody's going to have a good time soon. And it's a good reminder also that ultimately, no matter how much you think that, one particular group is behaving ridiculous or it's in their DNA or somehow that they are like that, that ultimately this is a place where, we should try to live happily together. But if you don't know what I'm talking about this incident, this accident that happened. Unfortunately, a 6-year-old girl died. In fact, the three people who were involved, so the father, mother, and the child, they were all foreigners also. They were Indonesian tourists, if I remember correctly. They're not from here. And unfortunately, while they were walking around, some idiot hit both the mum and the child with a very big car. And the young girl eventually died because of her injuries. She's been sent back to Indonesia. And I think the mother is still recovering. So obviously, very sad situation over there. And what pissed people off is not just the fact that it was an accident, because accidents happen. We know this is, it's real life, right? Nobody likes it, but it happens. But what pissed off a lot of people was this. Look at this. There were some eyewitness accounts of what happened there, and there were some people saying that the lady who accidentally hit the girls came out and started blaming them instead, saying, why you didn't see my car? Why are you standing over there? Why are you not more careful? And bear in mind, somebody died. So obviously there's a lot of people that's upset because, wouldn't you be? Somebody was saying, if it was me, I would have beat that lady up the moment she stepped out of her car and she opened her mouth and said this kind of thing. And who can blame them? If you are a parent, you know what it means for somebody to hurt your child. You shouldn't be doing anything to people, but you would beat the guy up. You would want to beat the person up. But then the whole story took a slightly bit of a turn because the person, if you can see from the picture, she looks Indian, and if you are a bit more aware of the distinction between, North Indian, South Indian, you might think that she looks a little bit more North or whatever. And so very quickly, the whole story just went like, okay, accident, okay, idiot driver, okay, CECA. And that's what happened. And when that switch happened, a lot of people came out with a lot of accounts of why they hate CECA Indians, and it was all over. So this is from Reddit. A lot of it was from Reddit, on threads, and you can see, this is where I feel a bit mixed, because on one hand, obviously, what this lady did is disgusting. And I mean, rightfully so, she's been arrested, she's under investigations, hopefully she gets charged and, she sits in prison or whatever. But then the other side is that anger turning into something a bit racist. Like, that was a little bit uncomfortable for me, especially when everything came out and then it was thought like, oh, all these Indians are the same, all these Indians are the same, all these Indians are the same. And in fact, it got to a point where even local Indians started feeling a bit like, hey, not my problem, please. And they started coming out and also saying things like, this is, it's not representative of all Indians, obviously, and drawing a line between foreign Indians and local Indians. And obviously between there's a lot, basically, there's a lot of different groups that come up and a lot of ugliness that was bubbling under the surface. Because bear in mind, none of this is new. I mean, I'm in the social harmony space, so I'm aware that, even before this incident, years back, there have already been a lot of friction between local and foreign Indians because, number one, a lot of local Indians, you should know, are Tamilians. There are smaller groups of, let's say, Malayalis or whatever, but Tamilians are like the largest group, and they have a very strong sense of history and culture, and also because they grew up here, like this is their home. They have roots back in India, but this is their home. They speak Tamil, they don't speak Hindi. For example, they refer to Deepavali as Deepavali, whereas the North Indians sometimes refer to it as Diwali instead. If you are not an Indian, you might be sometimes wondering like, oh yeah, what's this Diwali versus Deepavali thing? And then you just lump it all together. But if you are from that community, you'll know that there's actually a bit of a tension there, because if you call it Deepavali, then okay, you are respecting the local Tamilian root a little bit more, versus if you call it Diwali, for example, and this is a source of tension in some temples in Singapore, where if you call things like Diwali a bit too much, then it's like, hey, this is Tamilian Indian community, this is not Hindustani Indian community. But anyway, so because of this incident, all that ugliness from under the surface all came bubbling up. And it wasn't just from within the local Indian community, it was just locals in general. Because if you remember, a few years back, there was also a big hoo-ha about jobs. When you think about foreign Indians, when you think about the IT Indians, the CECA Indians, as we now seem to call them, what do you think of? You think IT, you think Changi Business Point, you think certain condo apartments in Singapore, right? And there's a reason why people feel very uncomfortable when these things come up, because locals feel like you have been taking our jobs. Like, we want good jobs. We want good jobs in IT sector. We want good jobs in tech sector. But then it's always being given to foreigners. And in fact, there was a huge hoo-ha in Singapore a few years back because there were accusations of all these Indians, when they come in, then they only hire their own people. They don't transfer skills. They don't they don't basically help the locals to take on those jobs. Instead, they just hire people from overseas to come in and then steal more jobs from locals. And there was a lot of resentment from there. And that's one, the economic side, the jobs thing. But there's also a whole matter of discrimination. And to be fair, Singapore is not unique. Because this is where, you have to admit, like, the caste system, the history and the culture of India has been exported a little bit. And unfortunately, sometimes this means caste. I'm not sure if you are aware of what this caste system is. You might have heard it now and then. But essentially what this caste system is, it's a Hindu concept that's been around in India for many, many thousands of years. It's illegal in India itself. Since I think the 1950s or something, it's been, on paper, it's illegal. But in real life, in practice, it's still kind of there. And what it means is that, for example, if you are from a particular caste, the caste system basically breaks up society into a few levels. And if you're from a higher caste, you're automatically given like more perks, you are treated with more respect. Nothing to do with whether you are a good person or whether you are, somebody who is respectable. It's just by virtue of your name and your background. And because of, how surnames work, sometimes people can tell your caste just by hearing your name. And then, fine, there's all these castes, but the most disturbing thing is that there is this level that's called the Dalit caste, the untouchable caste, and that is where things get really bad, because in that system, some people may not even feel comfortable with standing next to a Dalit. And to say, for example, you can't share the same space as me, get out. And because I'm the upper caste person, I have a right to tell you to leave, basically. And there have been reports, not just in Singapore, overseas as well, like in the US, in Canada, because in case you don't know, in the US, there's also a big chunk of Indian nationals who work in the IT sector. And there have also been reports that the caste system sometimes gets brought over there. And obviously that causes a lot of upset because if you're a country that has a bit more egalitarian values like us, like Singapore, we don't go around saying people like, oh, your surname like this, you can't stand next to me. Your surname like this, you deserve less respect. We are generally quite, equality, right? But because they bring this culture elsewhere, so there's been a lot of backlash basically and a lot of clash of culture. And Singapore is one of those. So if you can see, this thread on Reddit that's gotten almost 1,000 upvotes, that's basically trying to explain why in Singapore when we think of these CECA Indians, it's not just about the money, it's not just about the jobs, it's also sometimes about they're so entitled. And I can promise you, I know people who work in service sector, people who work in public sector, and all of them tell me, if they see somebody with a name that looks like they are from, CECA Indian community, they get extremely upset because they already have this idea that they're going to be entitled, they're going to be pushy, they're going to be asking for all sorts of things. And unfortunately, it does bear true. I mean, based on a lot of people's personal experiences, anecdotal, they feel that over and over again. And so people try to explain, why is it that CECA Indians are like this? Why is it that local Indians are not like this, right? Local Indians, you probably know people from your school, from NS, from your workplace, and they are not like that. But when it comes to the CECA Indians, suddenly, it just feels like they're extremely entitled. And entitled is the word that always comes up. Demanding and entitled. I will admit, I can understand where that comes from. I mean, I speak Hindi. I studied Hindi when I was in university. I know my prof, who is an extremely nice lady. And I've heard, from other students who told me, that they had a, initially very bad impression of her because of the way that she spoke, very direct, very rude, very blunt, very demanding. But as I studied, I studied Hindi for over 3 years, then I realized that there's a slight miscommunication because yes, Indians do speak a bit more bluntly, a bit more directly, because that's just how the language works. You just say what you want. But in a culture like ours, we don't often do that. If you realize, when was the last time that you told somebody flat out no? Right? Like in Singapore, we often say things like maybe, see how, whatever. We are a bit softer. We try to save everybody's face. That's not the case if you're talking to an Indian. They're very direct about what they want. And especially if you've traveled to India, you would know. Especially to North Indian states, you will know people there are extremely direct. They may not mean any harm, but you will feel very uncomfortable because you're from Singapore and we don't talk like this. I'm not trying to defend anyone. I'm just saying that if you travel enough and you know and you've mixed with different people, you will know that people have very different ways of communicating, and it's very easy for miscommunications to happen. Obviously, with this lady who ran over people, what she did was inexcusable. But if you're talking about CECA Indians in general, I think there's a bit of their own local background being thrown in, the whole caste system that's just built into them, being brought in over here. There's a bit of we must look care of ourselves, we must take care of our own people. So if you want, you hire your own people. Obviously, all of this is wrong. If you're coming here, you need to respect our norms. People like me who understand where you're coming from, that's not going to be the norm. Nobody owes it to you to understand where you're coming from. Because you need to realize that you are working here, you are living here. You need to bend and, in a sense, accept the norms that are here. And if you are constantly living in a bubble of your own expat community, you're not going to know what locals are like. You're not going to know what local community and culture is like. So for example, I know a couple of people who are from India. So you would call them CECA Indians. But because they branch out, they meet new people, they have a lot of Singaporean friends. And they have slowly realized, they themselves have told me they don't like it when they see some of their co-nationals from India who behave the way they do, as if they're still in Delhi, without realizing that they're now in Singapore. And so it's not as simple as just saying that all these Indians are like this. There's nothing in their DNA that says they will be like this. It's about where they come from. It's about breaking up this kind of cultural bubble. And honestly, whose duty, whose responsibility is it to break it up? It's them and it's the government. So for this, I can say, based on even my own circles in the social harmony, civic society space, there's a lot of people just thinking can the government please step in and try try to make integration a bit better, because if you don't, this is going to happen over and over and over again. The amount of backlash that came up because of one incident in front of a temple where sadly a girl lost her life, and this amount of backlash, this is not a one-off. This is years and years and years of resentment and tension building up under the surface, waiting for that one incident, and then everything came up. So, I mean, if you're from government, I hope you're listening very closely, because honestly, you need to pay attention to this. And this, I'm just talking about the Indians. You got the Chinese. That's I think it's going to be a whole other thing moving forward as well, because even though, yes, majority here Chinese, most of us speak Mandarin, whatever, but there's also an underlying tension, because some, not all, but some mainland Chinese have this sense of like, oh, you are just another province of China. You should be part of us. You should be grateful for us. I mean, as a Singaporean Chinese, when I hear those kind of sentiments, I bristle up, because, hello, this is my country, this is Singapore. Like, this is not, we are not China's, don't know how many earth province, okay? Like, we are our own people, and you need to respect that. So I think nowadays, if you notice, we're having a bit more talk about immigration, we're having a bit more talk about foreigners, about integration. And if government doesn't move fast enough, I'm saying it right now, in the next 10, maybe like 3-4 years, you come back to me. It's going to be a problem. So let's hope the government gets their act together. And I mean, I guess on that note, happy Chinese New Year, but Singapore style.